Distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you.
Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by New Relic. Visit newrelic.com/twist and see why thousands of developers worldwide don't deploy without it. And by Squarespace, an all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create a professional website and now an online store. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code TWIST7.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money and defeat you.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups. It's me, Jason Calacanis. This is a show where you learn how to start a company, grow your company, raise money, put a dent in the universe, be an entrepreneur. If you're not interested in busting your ass and trying to build something awesome or joining a team that is, please tune out. Go just do a YouTube search for Jenna Marbles or Smosh or Machinima or any of that other good stuff on YouTube. You can laugh, have fun. This is for people who want to work hard and build something in the universe, make jobs, make products. And today we have Brian Wong on the program. He's with Kiip, 19-year-old entrepreneur who's been busting his ass for 3 years building a very clever rewards program inside of apps. Welcome to the program, Brian Wong.
Thank you, Jason.
So you still look like you're 16 years old.
Yes.
How the hell did you start a company at 19? What did you do when you were 18?
So I ended up graduating college early. I skipped 2 grades in elementary school and 2 grades in high school. And then I ended up graduating when I was 18. And then that's when I moved down to the Bay Area to originally work at
So you
Digg.
skipped 4 years of school.
Yes.
What did you have, one of those tiger moms?
No.
You're laughing and smiling.
I know. Well, the funny thing is that's how people normally interpret it.
Yeah.
But my parents actually ended up being pretty lax. I mean, they wanted me to obviously be happy. And in fact, the funny thing is my mom actually told me that she didn't want me to skip because she was worried about my health. Because, you know, you go through a massive change in you know, your social behavior could be affected, stuff like that. So I think I turned out okay.
Was she right?
I think I turned out okay. I think. But yeah, so I ended up graduating when I was 18.
Graduating college when you were 18?
College, yes.
So when did you go to college?
14.
You went to college at the age of 14 when most people are going to high school or in their sophomore year? What college did you go to?
I went to the University of British Columbia. So I was born and raised in Vancouver. I'm Canadian.
When you show up at the age of 14 and there's 18-year-olds in college, what is that like?
It's obviously intimidating because I'm still human.
Right.
But most of my life I was basically going to school with people older than me, right? So it wasn't that difficult of a transition. Huh. And what's funny is when you're younger, a lot of people do underestimate you, and because I do look like I'm 12 and I still do because I can't grow facial hair, it's like it's good to be underestimated because once you do the thing you do and you kind of just be who you are, people are impressed, and it's a good thing.
So what was it, do you think, that led you to this road of skipping grades? Do you have siblings? Did they skip grades as well?
Yeah, so I have an older brother, 4 years older. So I always say that some things don't happen by accident. So it's not an accident that my brother happens to be precisely 4 years older than me, and then I skipped 4 grades. And the main reason is because when he was learning things, my mom would also loop me into the same lessons sometimes. So naturally, I would learn ahead. And so, yeah, there's a reason why. My brother, he as himself, he's a fantastic person. He actually now is working in fashion. He's working at a company called Herschel.
But did he skip grades?
No, he didn't.
So your mom just basically assumed you should be in the conversation with him.
Yeah, and it just so happened that timing worked out too. So a lot of the programs that I did go through in school up in Vancouver really kind of only existed when I was going through. My brother didn't have that sort of privilege, and so I just got very lucky as well in many ways.
But did you apply yourself? I mean, to get
for sure.
that much further ahead, you have to work at least twice as hard.
Yes, I was bored. That's the thing. So what happened was in school, I just felt that things were being repeated, and I could pick things up pretty quickly. And so I was like, rather than wasting my time, I'd rather just skip ahead and just get out of this thing as fast as possible.
Did you have some naturally high IQ or something? Like, did you get tested when you were a kid and they say like, hey, this kid's a little man-tade?
Yeah, so part of the requirements in the first 2 grades that I skipped was an IQ test. And so they did test me.
And what was it?
So my official IQ on record is 156.
That's interesting. Mine's 100.
No,
Yours
but that's
156 IQ.
Yes.
When
But that was
put
back.
you in percentile? No, it's when you were 8 years old.
Yeah, pretty much very young. Yeah, so I
Where
think
did
it may
that
have
put you
gone
in
down.
percentile?
I was 99th percentile for a lot of things. Yeah, so they measure you across multiple areas of academics and also cognitive ability. So
What's that like to be so smart? Like you're
can't
smarter than
answer.
your parents or your brother.
I don't. I think it's more. I think it's
smart, whatever. IQ smart. It's smart.
I think most of the intelligence piece comes with being able to adapt and pick up things very quickly and
Figure
sort
out
of
systems, you mean?
Figure out systems. And actually, I think as an entrepreneur, the funny thing is you kind of need to do that. You just kind of
Right.
learn. You're really the good ones are the ones that just learn a few steps ahead. And they're
Right.
fast enough to do it, and they look like they're just like on it all the time. But
Right.
you just know that at the end of the day, it's because they were just that much more ahead that they were able to lead the
Like
process.
3 months, 6 months ahead. You seem
Exactly.
like a genius in our industry.
Exactly.
But you were 4 years ahead, so you truly are a genius.
Thank you. But
But does that put a lot of pressure on you? Like, did you date girls in high school?
So yeah, the dating thing and also the drinking thing, right? So
Yeah.
luckily in high school in Canada, when you're 19, that's the legal drinking age. So
Okay.
when I went into college, my brother happens to be 4 years older than me, happens to look a lot like me.
So you get the driver's license. That's
so
great.
that was good. But once I moved down here, it was obviously I got set back, right? Because
Right.
yeah. So I was 19 here, and then the 21-year-old thing was not that.
So when you didn't date any girls in high school,
No, I mean it was pretty tough because dating younger is really not a.
and you go to
thing.
college at 14, and the 18-year-old
Yeah.
girls have no interest in you.
I guess it was a good thing that I
Or
wasn't.
do they have interest in
distracted.
you?
They thought I was cute, like in the baby cute type of thing.
But can you work that?
Yeah, you work it, you get you get the attention, and it's great. But
But they're not going to sleep
they're
with
not
you.
no
right?
exactly. But the thing is, it was great because I didn't get that distraction, right? Like I think because I was able to focus and just be as productive as I could. What's funny is I think once you pass 20.
Right.
It's just amazing, right? Because it's like once you pass 20, as long as you're within 20s,
Right.
you could be.
It's
20.
one group.
Yeah, it's one group.
You're fine then.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's up to then. You're very frustrated.
Yes.
So when did you first make out with a girl?
Oh, it was early on. I was 14.
So you're making out with college girls when you went into college? Is that what you're telling me?
There were older
At
girls.
14?
Yes.
Wow, being a genius has its privileges. Wow. So
We're
right
walking
now,
down this
people are
path.
like, what's this show about? Is it the Howard Stern show all of a sudden? But it is fascinating. Do you feel like you missed out on any part of youth?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what people experience. Again, I didn't experience it myself, so I can't generalize. But I think everybody has their own path. Obviously, when people look at it from the outside, it is, did you miss out on your youth, da-da-da.
Yeah.
But the funny thing, I think this was my youth. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I
Right.
do not have any regrets. Every year that I went through was amazing. I had a lot of fun. I was able to be, in the funny things, when you put a certain perspective, it's like 4 years ahead. One of my friends, and very good friend actually, wasn't trying to get me depressed, but they did say this just to frame it in the right mindset. They said, Brian, well, what if someone told you that you would just die 4 years earlier than anyone else? Then the 4-year jump, I know it's kind of depressing, but the 4-year jump doesn't
Right.
really matter anymore if you think about it. But the thing is, I just looked at it as being able to have a start early because
Right.
I just had this taste. I was like, I want to have that freedom. I just want to be out there. And I think school
You
at the
wanted to
time,
be an entrepreneur. You're too smart to work for somebody else.
well, yeah, I didn't even know that it was called an entrepreneur or that there was a category around it or that people would be one per se. It was more like it just happened very naturally just because I ended up doing a web design company, much like a lot of web entrepreneurs seem to do in their first steps, if you think about it.
Just building stuff.
Yeah,
for
it
other
just seems to be
people,
a trend.
Getting paid. It's
Yeah,
like super
totally,
easy.
totally.
And when did you start that?
So there's a funny story behind all this, and there's always a reason for things. So when I actually used to play ice hockey, I know, very difficult to believe.
Yeah.
I used
You
to
look
be
like you're about 90 pounds wet.
I
in the
know. I
shower.
used to be super buff. Trust me, I was like a really big dude way back then.
Yes, absolutely.
And I actually broke my knee playing ice hockey.
Ouch.
Yeah, and this was a lower femur fracture. But I was basically in a wheelchair for about 6 months, and that was when I started my first web design company.
Got it.
Because I had nothing better to do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when we get back, I want you to tell me how you wound up at Digg at the age of whatever it was, 18?
19.
19.
Yeah.
And then how you started this company. Raised $15 million from it. To be honest, I mean, this is like a list of investors who I would be, impressed if anybody had them. True Ventures, Hummer Winblad, Venture 51. I mean, Verizon. This is great people. $15.3 million raised. And you raised that money at the age of?
It was throughout the last 3 years, so between 19 and 22.
20,
Yeah,
22.
exactly.
So I want to get into that. Like, what is it like forget about making out with girls when you get a 14-year-old making out with 18-year-olds when you get to college, but what's it like to take down $15 million when we get back from this very important sponsor message? Hey, thanks. This has been such a great episode. I'm enjoying it myself, and I have to tell you about something else I've really been enjoying, Squarespace. I've been using Squarespace for years to build my own sites, and they keep releasing great new features for you to build exceptional-looking sites. And for those friends you have family members, they open a yoga studio, or they start a consulting firm, or they have a startup and they need to do blog their startup name, but they don't want to build blog software, of course. And you got to make a beautiful corporate site or a beautiful e-commerce site. You're selling some merch, perhaps. You're a band selling merch. You know that term. Anyway, Squarespace does this for you, and they have great new features like calendars. This is a beautiful feature, elegant, gorgeous. If you're running a yoga studio or you're in a band, you can make a beautiful calendar. Here's the new launch mobile and wearable site. I kept telling my team I want it to work really well on mobile because, hey, it's a mobile conference. And in this, you see they got that little stacked hamburger on the top left-hand corner there. And when you slide up and down, you notice it's responsive. The menu bar gets a little bit smaller, and this just works beautifully on an iPad or an iPhone. And another feature they added is that they are now doing commerce. So you can buy gorgeous stuff and set up an online store just instantly. It's built into Squarespace now. So you want to go you want to buy stuff, inventory stuff, sell it. It's all right there. Beautiful stuff. Check out the Truth and Lies website, which is beautiful. And I have to tell you, Squarespace has been just a great partner for us. Beautiful. Look at this. Gorgeous. Everything they do is gorgeous, and everything they do works perfectly on mobile. And that's the key today because the majority of traffic for your website, for all websites, is moving to mobile. The majority of traffic moved outside the U.S. over the last 10 years, and now the majority of traffic is moving to mobile. And let me tell you, mobile consumers, they spend money. Mobile commerce is big, and Squarespace is right there, right in the center of mobile and commerce. No credit card required. It starts at only $8 a month. And if you keep your site, go to Squarespace and just try it for free. But if you do decide to keep it, you can just use the promo code TWIST7, TWIST7, and we'll really appreciate that. It's everything you need to create an exceptional website, 24-hour support, exceptional-looking websites. And I, Jason Calacanis, use it myself for many of our sites, and I tell everybody, use it. In fact, for the new Inside.com site, we're using it, and it's going to be at blog.inside.com. I love the product. I love the team in New York. It's a great product, a great team at a reasonable price. In fact, it's probably worth a lot more money than they're charging. So go ahead and check it out. It's a wonderful product. Let's get back to this great interview. All right, welcome back, everybody. Thanks to our sponsors. With me is Brian Wong, the CEO and founder of Kiip, Kiip.me. You can go check them out. So you start this company. What was the mission of this company that you started when you were 19 years old? Why did you start it? What is it?
Yeah, so the story goes, I was working at Digg. That's kind of what brought me to the San Francisco area in the first place.
How'd you wind up at Digg?
Yeah, so that's even a funny story. So I had never been to California ever in my life up until I was 18. So I decided to take a trip down in late 2000 and...
You mean when you graduated college?
Yes, exactly. I had a little bit of a break. I didn't want to jump straight into working because the jobs at the time, and remember in 2008 wasn't that great of a economy. It was terrible, right? So I ended up just, I wanted to visit because I'd never been to Silicon Valley. I was like, what is it like? Is there like silicon chips everywhere? And what is it like? What is it? And I realized that it was nerdtopia per se, but there's a reason for it. And what I would do actually, and I still do this even now, whenever I go to a new city where I'm unfamiliar, I just kind of email people out of the blue, right? And a lot of the companies that I emailed, I just wanted to visit, just wanted to learn from. And one of them happened to be Digg. And I emailed Kevin, and I emailed Mike Mazur, who's the CSO at the time, and Bob Book, who's the VP of Business Development. Bob punted me over to Matt Van Horn, who now works at Path and is one of my closest mentors and actually an advisor to the company as well. But Matt essentially ended up meeting with me for breakfast. Long story short is I got an offer from Digg, and it was part of the process of getting me down there was also challenging from a visa perspective. And then I moved down in January of 2010.
Well, why would they hire an 18-year-old to do business development?
I think Matt saw a little bit of me in him because he went through kind of a process like that too to get his job at Digg. He kind of like was a hustler. He kind of pinged a lot of people. And business development, which is what I ended up in, is a lot about hustling and getting in contact with people. And
it's a little bit of projection, right? Like, I want to be as smart as Brian Wong, so therefore I'm going to give him a job.
Exactly.
But you played that.
Well, I think it was just a fantastic opportunity to learn, and Digg was an amazing first step. Right at the time, they were obviously still very popular, and the terrible things that ended up happening didn't happen yet. And in January, I moved down to San Francisco. And I was there for about 5 months.
Wow.
And I remember most of my job was essentially working with news publishers to get the Digg button integrated.
Sure.
So it was just to get them to put this JavaScript code in.
Yeah.
And as a result, actually, through that process, ended up meeting up a lot of press. So through that process, I made quite a bit of a network in the tech community and also in the tech press community. So I was very lucky to just have that chance to expose myself through this opportunity. And basically in May, Digg had a huge hit. Google changed their algorithm and lost a lot of traffic. They laid off 10% of their staff.
Right.
I was part of that casualty. So now I found myself without a job. First, again, this was my first full-time job, right? 5 months in losing
And your visa is tied to the company.
It is. You
Oh,
caught
wow.
on.
So is this the first setback you ever had in your life? I mean, being the, genius little man take kid who, cut 4 years from their education. Now you're laid off. That's got to be kind of a bummer for you.
It's a big setback. I mean,
Was it your first?
I don't think it was my first. I've experienced
bigger setback for
failures.
you?
I mean, I don't measure setbacks by bigger or smaller, it's
Right.
just by nature of the fact that it's a setback. And I
But
think
was it super bummer? Or?
it was. I mean, and I'll tell you that it was in May of 2010. It was around Mother's Day. I went back home to tell my parents what had happened. And as cliche as it could be, it's like it was raining at night. I landed and I took the cab home, and they had no idea I was coming. I told my mom what had happened, and she told me it was the worst Mother's Day present that she'd ever gotten.
Oh, great. No pressure.
Yeah, I know, right? And
You failed me,
I
son.
promised her that the following Mother's Days would be better, and I think they have been.
Yeah.
In fact, I just saw her this past Mother's Day, and I actually surprise my mom every Mother's Day now.
Yeah.
I just use it as a tradition. But so I ended up getting laid off. I found myself without a job. I kind of came back down to the States on a business tourist visa. You can as a Canadian. Luckily, I'm Canadian. There's perks of being Canadian sometimes.
Yeah.
And I ended up visiting a lot of companies, and I wanted to see if I could, get another job, finish kind of what I came down here to start, which was, to build a career in BD. So again, like in the beginning, it was about working for another company. I wanted to build my experience, but then the idea for Kiip hit me actually. So I remember on a long haul flight, I was, I think flying to Asia to visit some friends in Singapore, and I remember doing what I call the aisle creep. So I walked up and down the aisle of the plane, and I looked to my left and my right, and I noticed that every single person that was awake at least was playing some type of a game on their phone.
Yep.
And then it kind of hit me. I had a bit of a moment, and I was like, God, if there's so many people on this one medium playing this one type of thing, that must mean that there's a huge advertising opportunity.
Yeah.
Logic would say, right?
Yeah.
And then so I started doing
I do that same thing too, though. I walk to the back, and what I do is even you may do this too. I count. This is my OCD.
Okay.
I count what they're doing.
Oh, wow.
Because I liked it when Virgin America, started doing Boingo.
Yeah.
I want to see how many people are like actually online versus watching a movie versus playing Angry Birds.
Exactly.
And it was always like 2/3, 3/4 movies and games. And just like 10% will shoot the lock off their wallet for that $40 go-go service.
Exactly, right? So I think the funny thing was that observation for me led me to think that, listen, advertising must be so big in mobile gaming. I mean, because there's so many people on it.
Right.
But what I'd find out
And what do you know about advertising exactly at that point?
Very little. Practically nothing. Because I had studied...
But you knew publishers.
I did. I studied marketing in college as well. So I did have a formal education in it. But again, practical-wise, it's totally different, right? So I ended up sort of doing some digging, and I realized that, wow, banner advertising is still predominant in mobile, and it's these tiny little things, and they're annoying, and they suck, right? And I didn't want to blame anybody because, again, I think it was just people taking what they were used to from the web and just going, okay, the only thing that I can see that's changed is the screen is smaller, so let's just make it tinier.
Right.
And I was like, but that can't be the end goal, because if nobody likes it, how could it be effective, right? So how do we do it so that let's say we lived in an alternate universe where display never existed. What could advertising be? That was the question.
Yeah, starting from zero.
Exactly. And we looked at every game that we could find, and I found that there was this universal characteristic, and it was the achievement moment. And this was when you level up and get a high score. And that was my epiphany. That was my moment. And I was like, wow, hold on a second. There's so many of these moments already happening around us. So just people on phones and playing games that are already downloaded in the tens of millions. There must be all of these moments of happiness, these dopamine rushes.
Right.
And what can we do with these moments? Rather than abusing them and putting ads and weird stuff, let's actually acknowledge what people have done. Let's reward them.
Right.
And so the idea was born. Rewards for these moments of achievement within games. And the funny thing is, at the time I was reading a book called Predictably Irrational.
Sure.
And for those those who haven't read it, you should totally read it. And it actually inspired me to make the rewards serendipitous. So,
and what was it about the book? I mean, what's the thesis of the book? Tell people who haven't read it.
It's behavioral economics, and it's sort of a 101, very basic 101 on the fact that rational thinking for consumers around Adam Smith's invisible hand really doesn't apply some cases. Like buying an LV bag is a perfect example of this. The bag has utility, but you are buying it for the brand, and there's something about it that's beyond just the fact that it can carry stuff. And so it's Dan, the author Dan Ariely, looks at specific concepts around where things are actually irrational in some cases. And in the case of what we wanted to do, when you look at the reward, yes, we could say if you do this, you get that, but that's just driving people to do something that they don't actually want to do.
Right.
But my inspiration was let's let people play the game because they want to and surprise them. Actually make it a surprise and delight. Make it a serendipitous
So you
reward.
come up with this idea.
Yes.
And how do you manifest it in a business, in a company, and how do you take yourself from just a BD kid who's been laid off and mom is incredibly disappointed in you, which, by the way, explains a lot. The fact that her first reaction when you come home is, this is the worst Mother's Day ever. Now I know why you're an overachiever. Mom is withholding her love and manipulating you to success. I'm taking a note as a dad. And when my daughter comes home and she has bad news, I'm just going to be like, this has destroyed me. And then she'll never want to come home with bad news. I mean, now you're going to kill yourself over this.
No, I think it was a good impetus, but it was really, I think
she might be a closeted tiger mom.
Maybe. The idea was very almost like it would just stick in my head. It was one of those things that you would have, you just couldn't go to bed, you would just continue working. And so the magic that helped it get started was, so I actually learned how to design when I was very young. I took my own tutorials on Photoshop, and I pirated Photoshop, which everybody does when they're younger. Yeah. And learned how to design. The first thing I did when I got this idea was I canvassed it. I put it on Photoshop. I made what I thought a reward unit should look like. And I kind of made a mock-up. And I made it semi-functional. So I used the very little knowledge I had in HTML, and I coded up like a very basic working version of it.
On your phone. So
on my phone.
Click it and you could show a VC or an angel like, hey, check out this idea.
Bingo. So I did that.
Picture's worth 1,000 words.
100%. Didn't have a business plan, whatever. Yeah. But the concept, when you think about it, when people hear about it, the first reaction is typically, why hasn't anybody done this already, right?
That's when you know you got a good one.
Exactly. So I had a lot of those reactions, and I knew that I was onto something. And so the company started with that, and the funny thing is 3 years later, the idea actually hasn't changed. It hasn't changed at all. It's just grown in scope, but more on that in a bit. But the whole thing is, when we started, I actually bumped into some venture capitalists. One of them actually happened to be Adam Doggelli from True Ventures. And Adam and I had coffee. He saw the idea. I ended up pitching the partners. And again, this was not designed to raise any money at all. I had no idea what that process was like. I was very naive about it. And True happens to be one of the most founder-friendly VCs on the planet. And that actually was a lucky strike for me, and allowed me to actually start with a great VC and actually have a sort of a validation factor that allowed us to start going out there and talking to partners. So they just
said, hey, we'd back this idea?
Yeah, the original term sheet was for about $300,000.
So he says, hey, we'll back you to make a mock-up. We'll back you to make the minimal viable product, basically?
Yeah, and bring on, my co-founders came on, Courtney and Amadeus. I actually worked with Courtney at Digg, and Amadeus was at an agency called Sequence. Courtney and Amadeus were very good friends, and we all teamed up, and we decided to build this thing. And, we set a milestone. We said, let's have 10 brands and 10 games, because we don't make any of our own games. We wanted to build an SDK that fits on all the other games, leverages those moments, those traffic that exists already.
No reason for you to build games or do the game.
Why would we? Because again, people are already doing it, right? And why not just take what people are doing already, tap into existing patterns of behavior, but then also have brands that would be willing to essentially pay to give away things. And that was the original hump that we had to overcome. And you would imagine me walking up and down Madison Avenue and asking brands like, hey, we have this great idea. You basically just give away things, right? In these moments of achievement, but you
pay us to do
it. Yeah. and again, but that's not so much different than the promotions industry. So in many ways we had to draw corollaries, and people ended up realizing that there wasn't too much of a difference. And we did launch with 15 brands and 15 games. And so we kind of blew our metrics that we originally had as milestones.
What's an example? Give me an example of a game and a brand.
So you could just level up and potentially get a free pack of Sour Patch Kids.
So Sour Patch Kids was an actual brand?
Actually, it's right now with Mondelez, exactly.
Yeah, and with what game?
It's any game in our network, right? That's
So what are the
aligned with-
games in the network?
So there's games like Unblock Me. There's games like Robot Unicorn Attack. There's games like Into the Dead, Mega Jump, you name it.
Yeah.
So there's 1,000 apps in our network now.
So you got 1,000 apps.
Yes.
And when people level up, there's a chance, but not a guarantee, that they could get a coupon for something cool like candy.
Yes, but it ranges now because we've diversified. So the way the business has evolved over the last few years is it's very fascinating because it was more around, the DNA of the idea was all about gaming. And that has that formed the idea. It helped us understand the moment of achievement and really what that meant.
Yeah.
But how it grew over the last few years was fascinating. So we actually ended up realizing that moments exist in any app category. So games was really the beginning, but think about fitness. So you can log a run, count your calories. These are actual moments. Like these are moments of achievement. And then you think about productivity, my personal favorite. You finish a to-do list. Right? That's definitely an achievement moment. And you think even in food and recipes, so like bookmarking a recipe or even submitting a recipe is very and not my demographic. I haven't touched my stove in a year, but that's
for those people, that's a
their
very achievement.
Exactly. So we said, okay, how do we own all of these moments? We've now expanded to those categories, and the whole point is brands come in and they say we want to own certain moments. So Propel is a brand we work with from Pepsi. They don't work with games. They work with all the fitness apps in our network, and so they buy by the vertical. They buy by the type of moment.
How do they pay? Do they pay by CPM or do they pay by moment?
So this is the learning process that we had too. It's a great question. Because
cost per moment, CPM.
Yeah,
same thing. PPM.
Is that if you invent a metric in advertising, and you've probably seen this happen quite a bit in the industry, it doesn't really fly that easily in the beginning. You get a lot of pushback because there's a lot of fixed sort of processes that let people buy certain ways with IOs and RFPs and all that stuff. So we ended up using a CPE, a cost per engagement, and that's when someone...
And that existed already.
That exists, yeah, exactly. So Say Media actually kind of invented this metric a few years ago, and it became a fixture in how media buyers buy.
And what is it? Explain it, because we have some people listening to the program who are young entrepreneurs like yourself, or old entrepreneurs who haven't done something. What is a CPE?
Cost per engagement.
And
so
what is an engagement in that acronym?
That's funny because in different types of mediums, it means different things. So in video, an engagement is when someone watches it, right? Or opens it, right? In our case, it's when someone claims a reward. So in our flow, you have to put in an email address to claim the reward. Now, again, we don't share the email with the brand or the developers just to send you the reward, right? So it's more of a mechanism to not kick you out in the actual app or game, because typically you'll see in mobile advertising, you tap on something that throws you out. You're like, why am I being thrown out? In our case, we say, put in your email, and you can address it whenever you want. It'll be in your inbox. It's safe and sound there.
Like a Groupon.
Yeah, keep on playing. Do whatever you were doing, and now it's sitting in your inbox, so you can keep.
And we're not
going
to give your email to the marketer.
No. And that's the number one thing that we said as a rule, because Kiip, in many ways, is a consumer brand.
Right.
So all of our rewards, people actually see Kiip. The funny thing is, you'll never hear, and I characterize it this way, you'll never hear a consumer going, "Oh my God, I love AdMob, I love millennial media." iAds completes me.
Right.
But they do say that they love Kiip, and we've always wanted to build a consumer brand that people actually appreciate and know that we're accountable to our brand. That these rewards aren't something to scam you into something. It isn't to catch your email address. It's none of that.
It's not like the ones that, remember Scamville? There was like whole expose.
Absolutely not.
In TechCrunch, where it's like fill out what was it, like a 3-month
survey,
trial to Netflix or a survey.
So we avoid trials. We avoid free subscriptions. We avoid things that just appear sketchy. And the other way we avoided it is we only primarily work with top-tier consumer brands, right? So that's a big deal. So brands are like Best Buy, Coke, Pepsi, Mondelez, which used to be Kraft, you name it. Like these guys, we want to make sure we bring on the top-tier consumer
When we get
brands.
back from commercial break, I want you to explain to me how a 22-year-old builds a company of 45 people, the majority of which are older than you. I'm guessing. Is that right?
Yeah, they are.
Majority are. And then and how do you command respect in that regard because I spent a part of my career when I was younger I was 25 or 24 when I started my first company. People thought I was a genius. Far from it compared to yourself. But I did have 2/3 of the people who worked for me were older.
Yes.
So I want to get into that a little bit when we get back from this commercial break. Stick with us. Hey everybody, what a great episode this has been. And check out this beautiful, beautiful website for this great event, Future Stack by New Relic. It's going to be happening in San Francisco on October 24th and 25th, and it's all about tomorrow, the what ifs, the why nots, where are we going next, reimagining the future of the entire software industry. They got the Vice President of Azure from Microsoft, the CTO of Rackspace, and New Relic's very own coding CEO, Lou Crine. and it's going to be an amazing event. Cake is doing the kickoff party. Wow, I love the band Cake. So head over to futurestack.io and register right now. Use the promo code TWIST, TWIST, and get 25% off. It's going to be a great event at the Grand Hyatt San Francisco, October 24th and 25th. New Relic presents Future Stack. And again, use the promo code TWIST, and you will get 25%. And of course, you all know New Relic for doing monitoring of your website and your app's performance. Everybody's using this product. Tons of people, including myself. I get weekly reports from them to see how the launch ticker is doing on performance, and I really like it. I was actually looking at it this morning and very pleased to see we had no downtime and the site was very responsive. That's not like that every week, but most weeks. And if you go to newrelic.com/twist, you can create a free account and get this free This Week in Startups t-shirt, which is absolutely gorgeous, designed by one of our super fans. So go ahead and go to newrelic.com/twist to get the t-shirt and check out futurestack.io. Futurestack.io, futurestack.io. I'm going to be going, so I'll see you all there. I'll see you all at futurestack.io. Let's get back to this program. All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Brian Wong, who is the CEO and founder of Kiip. That's KIIP.me. He's raised $15 million to make a rewards program for video games and other apps, mobile apps, where, hey, you finish your run or your to-do list, you might get a Gatorade or a Sour Patch Kids or, I don't know, a Nike coupon for Nikes or something.
Not? Yes.
So who knows? So anyway, here's a look at what are we looking at here in this video? I'll play the video. What's that all about?
So this is the wallet that we launched late last year for people to actually compile their rewards. But we actually here have Kevin at Digg, and you can see that someone's playing a game in a line and they got a reward for a free pack of Skittles. So the whole idea is, how do you take what people are going to do already in their natural environment and reward them for it in a serendipitous way?
So what's the most successful reward you've done? Don't tell me the name of it because I want you to get into the actual deals. What's the biggest ad spend and the most number of rewards that were given, and then how many were claimed?
Yeah, so we go by performance. So every time someone engages with the reward, that's the reward given away, and that's when the brand pays. So
you don't have to actually have somebody redeem the Skittles. The fact that they
have claimed it.
They claimed it is enough.
Exactly, that's enough.
Which makes sense.
Well, yeah, because it's an intent to go and redeem. And the thing is, we don't want to hold ourselves accountable for the conversion flow that happens after that, because we can't control that. That's up to the brand, right? Yeah. So right now, the biggest deal that we've had to date is about $700,000.
Wow.
And this was a major consumer brand, and it was a very big sort of vote of confidence. And
how many engagements do they get for 700,000?
700,000 engagements.
Oh, so $1 an engagement.
Exactly.
Is that the going price for an engagement? $1 either?
Pretty much in our network, yeah, because it's kind of a fusion between a sort of someone who's concentrated in that moment, right? That they actually care about your brand. They're qualifying themselves as a potential person who would buy something from you. They're happier now because you were there in their moment of happiness, right? Because the principle is simply, when you're happy, everything around you is great, right?
Yeah.
So that transfer of that emotion is very valuable as well. And so a lot of that is very important. So that engagement for us is, I think we're actually underpricing ourselves sometimes, but $1 for us is right now the average going rate.
What is the average redeem rate, though? Because it does seem to me that if I level up in my game, I would think 9 out of 10 people don't redeem. So you get those 9 people in the impression of the Skittles for free.
Yeah.
They only pay for the $1. So if you blend it, you're paying maybe 50 cents for the person who claimed, and the other 9 people you're paying 5 cents or so, 6 cents for them to view the impression. Is that right?
No. So the whole point is, when someone puts in the email address to claim it, that's when we
get paid.
That's when we get paid.
But only a percentage of people do that, is my point.
Yes, exactly. So right now, the percentage of people that actually, on average, put in their email address and claim is 22%.
Great. So the other 4 out of 5
they don't pay
people,
for that.
They get that impression for free.
Exactly. But here's the burden is now on us as a company to optimize and to make sure that what we're doing is not wasting those actual moments. So for us, scarcity is actually key. We actually have frequency caps, for example, where if I show you a reward 3 times and you don't put in your email address, we don't ever show you that particular reward ever again.
Right.
And that actually creates a redemption floor, if you think about it. But the fascinating thing behind that is, you can almost imagine the faces of media planners when we say that sometimes in meetings, as they go, oh my God, my impressions are like melting away, because that's what they're used to buying.
Right.
And the thing that I'll tell them is, just because you showed something to someone 20 times, and they didn't like it, doesn't mean that showing them another 20 times is going to make them like you more, right?
Yeah,
so,
you got to move on.
Move on. So the whole deal is let's optimize for this conversion. Let's make it so that they actually like it. And the best part is
somebody's diabetic and you keep telling them they should have
exactly.
Skittles.
They don't want it. Just don't give it to them, right?
I'm fat. Don't tell me Haagen-Dazs.
Exactly. But the other thing too is now that we have verticals and now we have these types of moments per se, and now we actually understand more about who these people are, we can actually start doing some pretty interesting machine learning, right? So if we know that, Jason, you happen to play games at like 5 p.m. and you happen to use your workout app at like 8 p.m. and you redeem these types of rewards, what does that make you, and how does that sort of imply that your future activity and redemption? What future reward would you like the most? And so we map those types of probabilities across the entire board, because now our monthly actives are about 65 million. We see a lot of people going through the network every month, and about 500 million moments every month as well. That's sort of the typical number of moments we see in our network of about 1,000 apps.
The great thing about this, I think, for app developers is it doesn't screw with their existing advertising opportunities or their existing revenue opportunities through in-app purchases.
Bingo.
It's incremental, right?
Totally. And in fact, in many cases, it increases it because for the first time, not only are we helping monetize, and the funny thing is the monetization equation has always historically been an exchange, right? You give up a piece of your screen, you kind of F up your UX a bit, and we'll give you something in return, right? Like
it's a compromise.
It's a compromise, but it doesn't have to be like that all the time, right? So the way we looked at it was, why can't that same thing that's being used to help you monetize actually help retain people, right? Because now people are coming back.
Do you find it drives people to get to the next level in their, quest? So, hey, if I got Skittles at level 7, maybe I want to get to level 8 and 9 and get a Snickers and a Mars bar.
So what we've learned is actually a giant sort of experiment of human behavior. It's fascinating. So you have some people that will try to figure it out, right? They'll be like, I got it at 7, then I got it at 14, then maybe I'll get something at whatever, right? So the whole thing is, that's a very tiny percentage of people. But most people will be like, when you receive a gift, you're like, oh yeah, awesome, this is a gift. It's a very nice
gesture. They're not really trying to figure
You're not going to be like, so
it.
why did you give me this gift? Like, how do I figure you out? Like, that never happens, like, with most normal human beings. So we see that behavior, and it's just amazing to see how people respond.
Have you thought about bringing this to Xbox, where serious gamers are, and they have their credit card numbers in, and you could actually maybe close a transaction? Where are you with that?
Yeah, so our ultimate mission, not vision, but the mission is to own every single achievement moment on the planet.
Got it.
Right? And this does not necessarily need to mean that it's on the phone, right? It could mean that it could be on consoles, it could be on, so this is where it gets super trippy, is we see opportunities in moments that exist in connected devices even. So think, you've probably heard of the Nest thermostat, right?
Sure.
Like it's connected to your phone, you can change your thermostat from your phone. Imagine you hit your energy consumption goal for your home. PG&E should be rewarding you, right? So stuff like that. So the future is really taking these moments that exist that now we can actually detect because of the technology that we have, and allow people to be there to acknowledge these everyday victories, right? So we always talk about everyday victories, things that normally would go unnoticed, but what if there's a utility associated with that actually being reciprocated? That's the question that we have, and we're answering.
Have you thought about applying it to media? Like the media space is kind of foobarred, whether it's newspapers or magazines or even video, YouTube.
Yeah.
So somebody watches the 5th episode of Angry Orange and something happens that doesn't happen if you've only watched 3 or 4.
So we have been thinking about it really hard, and you'll notice, because I came from Digg, you would imagine I would think about that quite a bit. And the thing is, I just don't, my whole reason why we haven't entered into that yet is I just don't think the whole like commenting 5 times or watching a video 5 times is enough of a meaningful moment to garner a particular reward, because it now feels like I'm just watching as if I'm a Pavlovian dog and I'm kind of hitting certain milestones.
Hitting the pedal.
Whatever, right? Yeah. But I think what would be very fascinating is taking very sort of, not like niche in terms of size, but sort of niche use cases where, for example, you watched a video of Mario Batali preparing a pasta, right? And then a reward should come from a Campbell's, right? So that would make perfect sense.
You completed the 4 minutes.
Yes, or like you now watch this pasta preparation video. Obviously, you want to cook your own pasta.
Right.
It just makes sense. So what does this content mean? So imagine finishing a trailer and Fandango rewarding you. So things like that make sense. Once you know the context of the actual moment, that's what we end up seeing.
Have you put in, I mean, you brought up Pavlovian dogs and whatever. Have you thought about variable reinforcement where, like, okay, you won the Skittles, but I won the mega bag of Skittles, or I won a year's worth of Skittles, so that I could have this like epic reward moment that's random.
So golden tickets. Yeah.
Golden tickets.
Yes.
Yeah. Just enhanced rewards.
100%. So the whole concept of Kiip in many ways is variable ratio enforcement. But at the same time, we realize that by throwing surprises in there and actually making it feel special sometimes to people is fascinating. Like you also have we actually describe it as like a one-to-one thing. Like you actually feel special. Just because you've claimed it, you feel like you've earned it, you actually feel like it's yours. So we'll run campaigns sometimes where, let's say there's like a default coupon code and it's like anybody can typically use it. We actually will sometimes append sort of characters after that code, just like random alphanumeric code, just to make it look like it's yours.
Right.
Even though that first 5 digits may actually be the bulk of the code and actually how it makes it work. Just making it feel like it's yours.
Got it.
Decreases the amount of people trying to game the system, and it also increases the propensity for someone to redeem.
Digg was the hottest internet startup when you joined the company.
Yes.
Right up there with Facebook. In fact, Facebook copied the like button from the Digg button, which it was your job to propagate on the web.
Thank you.
And then Digg spectacularly failed.
Yes.
Why? And Reddit has spectacularly succeeded and soared, in fact, and become a cultural phenomenon.
Yes.
Why did Digg fail?
There's a lot of reasons. I don't really know the exact one.
You were there. I mean, what do you suspect?
I think there was a combination of things. I mean, the funny thing is I look at the way that Digg iterated as well, right? Like the culture of iteration.
Yeah.
Because there were these big versions that Digg released, it was like, V2, V3, V4. V4, as you know, was the nail in the coffin. And I was like, it had to be these big events of releases. But the funny thing is, even while that was happening, you had Facebook kind of blazing ahead, kind of just changing things for the sake of changing things. And what I think happened was Facebook was training their user base to expect changes, right? And Digg, because we kind of felt like there was always going to be this big release, that there was this hesitancy to change and iterate and to move ahead. So what happened was, anytime something big happened, there was a lot of eggs naturally invested in it, right? And so that's what happened with V4. A lot of eggs were thrown into that basket, and there was no de-risking. It was just go big or go home. But it didn't really have to be, right? If the culture of iteration was there.
And that was on Kevin Rose to a certain extent. I mean, he wanted to go big and have it be more Twitter-like or Facebook-like.
This is the plight of a lot of entrepreneurs as well in the Valley, right? Because it's either you're growing like this or you're failing.
Right.
That's the thing, right? So a lot of this was, I think there was pressure across the entire org. And again, many startups today where it's like, we got to do something massive.
Where's the hockey stick?
Let's do a big thing, right? It's like, but you don't have to sometimes. Like, it's like the iterative moves and being nimble is actually what's going to help you survive in the first place. The big thing will happen when it happens, right? You can't design for that all the time. It's not like Lyft decided that it would be a big success. Right? It was just them iterating. In fact, it started.
It might have been the mustache.
It might have been the mustache.
Who knows? Or the fist bump.
Could have been anything. It could have been many factors. But they actually started, as you know, with this concept of Zimride, and it was essentially like a car sharing thing.
Nobody cared,
right? But then they kind of just went, you know what? Let's keep on going, right? I don't care if there's a regulation issue. Like I know Logan personally, the founder, and I remember when the concept was born for Lyft, and everybody was like, oh well, you just copied Uber, da da da. He's like, I don't care. This is great. This is our version.
And now Uber's copying them, right?
Yes,
they're going to do ride sharing.
And there's actually billboards that they drive.
Shave the mustache.
Yes.
I saw. I'm an investor in Uber for all. But I mean, I don't know. I know as much as you do. I'm not even in San Francisco, so I talk to Travis every 6 months or whatever. We have dinner. So before the commercial break, I was asking about management. You were a bit of a misfit in high school and college because you're this anomaly, and then you go into the working world. I don't know, a misfit, but you were an anomaly. But you said you fit in. People gave you did that apply as well to running companies? Like when you're in a meeting with somebody who's 35 or 40 years old, you must be at some point who has 20 years experience on you. What's that like? And do they look at you in a condescending way? Or when you start negotiating salary with somebody who has, 3 kids and is 20 years old, is that an issue? So I have a rule, and that is anybody who just does have age become a preconception in how they judge me, I don't want to work with them. And I have the choice to, right? And that's the best part. It's like, these people clearly, if they have an issue with just how I look and how old I am, there's probably going to be even more problems when we work together. Massive red flag.
Exactly. But on top of all that, I think what's funny is you again have this issue with founders many times where it's like, we started the company, but we're not necessarily, in many cases, the most fit for running it, right? So I actually proactively knew this, and I'm lucky I got classically trained in business. I had a business degree in college that helped to a certain extent, but in many cases, I knew that I needed to make myself better. So a year ago, I proactively hired a CEO coach.
Yep.
And I made sure that we would basically, I would train myself to be better. And
who's the CEO coach? Can you say?
Guy, yeah, his name is Rich Hagberg. Actually,
Rich Hagberg.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of pretty prominent clients. I don't think I'm allowed to tell people what the clients are, but yeah, he's a very, very accomplished CEO coach. And the thing is,
what does that cost? Like $1,000 a month or something? 10 times a year?
It's a fee. Yeah, it's a fee.
But I'm going to say like 5 figures a year or something like that. 10, 20 grand.
It's a more like a type of consulting type of thing. So you can imagine that the consultants
gets a little equity, maybe.
No, it was all cash.
Got it. So a couple $100 an hour.
Yeah. So when you think,
what are you doing in a CEO coaching strategy? What happens? You just tell them like, you lay on a couch and you're like,
it's like a shrink session, basically.
Is it really?
Yeah. You kind of just say what your issues are, and then there's half kind of learning, right? So like, Brian, here's sort of like generally what would happen in continuing to further your culture as your company passes a certain stage in terms of size. You just sort of kind of being like someone with a crystal ball for a bit, kind of like what are potential issues you might face in the future, Brian, and making sure that I'm equipped for that. But I think a lot of it was learning.
So that could be him putting out a topic for you to answer questions.
Absolutely.
As opposed to you coming to him and saying like, sales is...
There's always going to be the tyranny of the urgent, right? There's
right.
going to be issues that come up just on a day-to-day. But most of this is training you so that 6 months from now, you're not completely taken by surprise, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of the challenges of being younger and managing is it's actually less about this control freak nature that we typically have as an entrepreneur that just is used to kind of doing everything, is enabling, right? So my philosophy is very much so around, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to enable you to know exactly what you should be doing that would be aligned to what we're actually trying to accomplish, right? And anytime there's a bottleneck, it's my job to remove it. I feel like I've failed if I haven't done that, right? And I can't say to you with a straight face that I'm the most experienced CEO on the planet because I'm just not, right?
Yeah.
And so acknowledging that is the number one thing, right? Walk into a conversation, listen, guys, I'm not the one to give you the right answer for everything, right? I can give you my opinion, and naturally that will probably be very aligned to the vision of the company because it obviously happened to be the company that I started. But at the same time, let me help you find the answers, and that's the number one thing. And I think I'm learning more from my employees as well, and than they are from me sometimes, because when we first started our sales team, for example, Chris Coburn, our head of sales, is based in New York, and he had to teach me a lot about selling media, right? So when you end up going to agencies, like what is the etiquette? How do you, what are they looking for? What are the things that motivate them? I had no idea. So a lot of it was, how do I, again, stay a few steps ahead and understand? And this was coming from people like Chris who were very experienced in the industry.
Or in that case, catch up.
And catch up.
Yeah.
And then you have but the thing is, when you're starting a company that's supposed to disrupt an industry, and I use air quotes because people love using the word disrupt all the time. But the whole idea is, if it's so new, some of the traditional rules should not even apply. So knowing them is good as reference points, but breaking them are specifically what you're designed to do.
Well, that's why some people say young entrepreneurs have an advantage over the older ones. The older ones can more easily build a business, but they have a harder time with the breakthrough disruptive business, where younger people have an easier time with disruptive. So do you buy that?
Yeah, I totally. I think it's more around the perspective of, we just don't know what the limits are. Right? Because we haven't experienced a slap in the wrist. We don't necessarily see barriers that typically end up being, usually what happens is, people who are more experienced are they mistake a particular setback as something that they contributed to, right? So they go, I must have caused this thing. This is not going to happen, right? But at the end of the day, the world is constantly changing. So all the assumptions that you made in the beginning should actually be reassessed every time you're trying to push the envelope. And the funny thing is, with technology, like you said, in 3 months, it's like years. That's even more so the case now. And that's also, it's interesting. It leads to how we are perceived, and I'm talking about the younger entrepreneur in business meetings and in presentations, is we're actually now expected to be the ones with the answers. It's actually quite frightening in some cases. Is I'm walking to meetings now, and they want me to be the one who goes off on a limb and says crazy stuff. It's actually like the expectation. And it
was like that in Web 1.0.
Yeah.
It was worse in Web 1.0 because the internet was new. So in Web 1.0, which was now 18 years ago, when you were 3 or 4 years old in 96, 97, people didn't even know what the internet was. So when you were coming in, they're like, what's going to happen? Tell me what's going to happen. How is the internet going to destroy my business?
Exactly. And I think now it's like, I'm glad it's a little bit more orderly. I think there are sort of this faith being put in the right people, I think. But at the same time, I think younger entrepreneurs need to take heed and understand that you need to know what has happened, learn history, because history does repeat itself.
Right.
And I think someone said that it rhymes, right? So I think it's like, it doesn't exactly look exactly the same.
But there's themes.
There's themes. And so you need to know what those themes are. And you can't, like, ignorance in this case is just not bliss. Like, you need to know sometimes, because you'll see sometimes it's going to be a big train that you just don't see coming, just slamming into you. And that's what happens sometimes to companies that end up just all of a sudden overnight, you're like, what happened? They just didn't know.
It's like Built to Last. I don't know if you ever read Built to Last,
No,
which is the follow-up to Good to Great.
Yeah.
It's like, what are the businesses, the paranoid businesses that survive through? Because most of the businesses that do get killed and disrupted, they just don't even see it coming. It just hits them from the side, and they're like, oh, we were supposed to sell books directly to people.
And your job is to be
mail?
paranoid, constantly question the status quo. That's kind of what helped the company evolve for us. Like, if we had just stuck with games until now, I don't think we'd be here today, right? Because our reaction was, well, yeah, games were great, and games are something that certain brands will buy, but what will every brand buy, right? And we wanted to increase our customer pool, and this came from just observing and understanding that the behavior changes here, and looking at actual other apps, so to-do list apps. By nature, retention is built into it. You have to use it every day. It's just what it is. But a game developer has to go, ooh, how do I make it sticky? How do I do all this other stuff to make it so that people want to play it every day? But at the end of the day, just look for things that are behavioral habits that are actually very daily in nature.
And what do you think of these apps where people are getting paid to lose weight, or they put like because it is another behavioral dynamic where you give $100 and you get it back if you go to the gym each time.
Gym Packed.
I guess
we're actually integrating into that app as well. Yeah.
Right. So what do you think of this sort of monetary gambling, semi-reward gambling kind of apps?
So for behaviors that are usually something that people don't naturally want to do, it sometimes is effective, right? So sometimes, motivating yourself to work out every day is not exactly something that you're like jumping for joy every morning to do, right? Taking out the trash is another. For kids, brushing your teeth, again, building habits. These are things that I think there's some cases where it is effective, but again, and this has just been proven many, many, many times, the serendipitous reward is more effective, right?
That's just Skinner, isn't it? Like somebody... If you're getting some consistent reward, you get $1 every time you come. That's one thing. But to get a variable, like every other time you come or every third time, it's much more powerful.
But it also, the expected one taps into a part of your brain that's very transactional, right? So it's something that actually turns you into something that goes, well, okay, so I went to the gym, blah, 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 and then I go to the gym 5 times, I get a $5 reward. I go to the gym 10 times, I get a $10 reward. Like human beings are very good at pegging these things and demanding what we never really thought we were going to get in the first place. These are things that, again, once you peg it that way, ends up being the result. So it's very dangerous if you aren't able to be flexible and actually realize that sometimes it's tempting to just do the whole short-term thing. Let me just pay you to do something. Let me just pay you to do something. That happened quite a bit. But the thing is, that's not long-term. There is no affinity. I'm not doing this because I want to. I'm doing it for some other random disjointed incentive. And that's very, very dangerous. In fact, that's happening a lot in this industry right now. And I have to basically make a plea and realize that you guys have to realize that you're pissing in the pool. You're actually making the engagement overall as numbers very moot. Like the numbers aren't valid when something isn't incentivized.
What are you referring to exactly?
Getting paid to do things like engage with brands. So getting paid to like a page. Like, well, the modern version is like a page, watch a video, tweet about us, rank me in the App Store. Right? These are things that don't necessarily, they're not supposed to be incentivized, but they are.
And it's actually against the terms of service. If you can't pay people to give ratings, but people
on Android, anything flies.
Android, anything flies.
Yeah. But on Apple, of course, Apple's been trying to, they got rid of app gratis. They kind of made sure that, a good chunk of the ecosystem wasn't just incentivizing all that.
Was that a good move to get rid of app gratis? I thought that was kind of puzzling because they were just paying to give exposure to apps. Like, why can't I pay for installs? Well, what was do you think their motivation?
I don't know exactly what it was, right? Because I think it was a lot of layers that just wasn't being revealed, and this was between them and them. But I think on a general sense, the notion of me paying to manipulate is something that shouldn't be the case in the first place. It's actually more solving for a dysfunction in the ecosystem. What people were trying to solve for is the App Store ranking list, right? It was just a reaction to the fact that list was so powerful but flawed. So the thing is, that's not a business, right? That's what you have to realize this. Just as an entrepreneur, you look at this and go, okay, I'm actually making money off of fixing some stupid random flaw in some list, right?
A hack.
hack.
Yeah.
And you're not going to build a sustainable business off of fixing a hack, right?
And the hack is, I have a new app, I want to be in the top 10.
Yes.
So somebody will pay $100,000 to get in the top 10.
Exactly.
But then their app is like, it's like pouring gasoline on a log.
Yeah.
It's like the app isn't that good anyway. It didn't earn its way to the top.
Pour gasoline on a damp log or something. I mean,
on wet leaves.
Yeah, wet leaves, yeah. So it's like
be pretty.
You can't put, there's only so much lipstick you can put on that pig, right? So I think that what's interesting is good content always continues to succeed. I think you have this addiction to being featured in the App Store. Again, distribution and getting your app noticed is still a very big problem, but that naturally happens in a market that becomes crowded.
Yeah.
Markets are markets. They have their dynamics.
But if you bought iAds as an example to promote
Yeah.
your ad and you moved up the app ranking,
Yes.
Apple wouldn't mind.
No, because obviously they make money off of it.
So that was my problem. I felt it was
Yeah.
a very much like an antitrust kind of a thing. And I think if they get an antitrust investigation, that should be at the top of the list, because if I had a magazine
Yeah.
and you bought the back cover,
Yeah.
and by the nature of buying the back cover, you became, a top 10 app.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's the nature of advertising. I mean, if you bought AdMob, you could do that as well. If you bought your service, you could do that as well, right?
Yes. I mean, no, we don't actually do app installs. We don't actually.
Well, what if I
help
say you get a
promote.
free app and you put your email address?
We don't do that.
You don't do. Why
No,
not?
because we just don't want to play in that arena. In fact, my
What, 'cause
whole
it's smarmy?
well, that and like you said, a lot of the reputation is really not that clean. And then on top of all that, we're about helping developers, right? So the whole idea is, and I actually believe that when you kind of take money from within the same ecosystem, so in that whole ecosystem is like developers pay developers, right? It's the same money in the same pool, right? And so it's
Yeah.
kind of like you're just sloshing around a lot of urine, right? But the whole thing is, how do we add to it, right? How do we combine two pools, right?
Right.
How do we make everything better? And so that's why I looked at advertising, and I looked at the oodles of money that are just sitting there,
Yeah.
and I looked at developers and the oodles of money that's sitting there too.
Yeah.
But I think by marrying those two and doing it in a very genuine way, you create something that's better for everyone. That's the ecosystem. It's the world that's what's the new creation that we want to bring out today. We don't want to just iterate on the same things over and over again.
All right, listen. You've been very honest, Brian. It's
Yes.
a great story. But this is, to your own admission, a simple, clever idea that when you told it to people, they said, why doesn't it exist already? You're this Mensa guy. You got 150 IQ. This can't be the complete vision. There's got to be more. What's as we close up the program here,
Yeah.
5 years from now, when we look at Kiip, what are we going to see? Is it just going to be a bigger network, or is there some bigger grand scheme here? Give us a little bit of a hint of the roadmap.
So what I'll say is we're a moments company, right? So we understand that now consumers consume in series of moments, right? So I almost evoke my phone. So if I'm hungry, I'm going to use the Seamless app. If I'm going to work out, I'm going to use my exercise app or whatever it may be, right? So it's always going to be now a series of moments. And as a moments company, as we own more, and through rewards, we're doing that right now. But there may be other ways that we'll do it in the future. As we own more, we will become the most important mobile company on the planet, right? Understanding that we can own all the moments that exist in people's daily
You
lives.
think you're going to be the most important mobile company on the planet?
Absolutely, because as you become a part of everybody's daily lives, and this is again through many ways. Companies, what's the most important mobile company right now?
Well, I guess you could say the hardware or the operating system, or you could say an app.
Apple, Google, right?
So logic would say Apple and Google are the two biggest players.
So they
and then
own
BlackBerry
moments
and
by
Windows.
creating the device, right? They
Correct.
own moments by creating the OS.
Right.
I'm owning moments by creating engagement mechanisms that let people become a part of it. So
Right.
you have to, when you look at the whole vision, it's like our mission is to own every single moment. The vision is to make those moments matter, right? And we're making them matter right now through rewarding, through helping brands be a part of it. But there's all this value in the moment that a lot of people haven't seen yet, and we're just unlocking it one after another.
So there's going to be some other thing that could happen in that moment.
Could be,
Yeah.
or that moment could lead to other things. So now that we know more about what you are doing and what is exactly a part of that moment, right,
Got
and
it.
the environment you're in, that
Right.
involves a lot of understanding of the person you are. And so
Right.
it's
So I'm a runner.
you play games,
I play games, first-person shooters. I'm a male. I'm 25. I'm in San Francisco. And now there's something else you can do with me.
I guess you could put it that way.
Yeah. There's a gym membership or a pair of sneakers that would apply just to me.
Yes.
In a way, it's almost like a new version of AdSense. They created this huge market for AdSense that was based upon the content of the page.
Yes.
You're saying it's based on the moment.
Well,
in the
Google's
human.
water is queries, right?
Right.
Because everything they do involves querying.
Your
right?
intent, yeah.
My water is moments. That's the intent. Moments are the new intent because you are in a fitness moment. It encompasses you obviously intending to work out, and you are someone who is interested in working out. And so there's two big things that are part of it. In fact, so we earlier this year got an investment from IPG Interpublic Group, one of the bigger ad holding companies, and Michael Roth is the CEO of IPG, and I sat down with him for the first time, never met with him before the investment, and I asked him, why did you invest in us, right? The first question that came out of my mouth, I was like, what? And he was just like, well, it's because you guys have pioneered this notion of the moment, and for a marketer, it's incredibly valuable because it encompasses two major things. It's audience and relevancy in one neatly wrapped up concept, and for us, that continues to be the priority. We have the media value, right? We've continued to work with brands to unearth that, but like I'm hinting at, there's value beyond just the fact that brands want to be there. There's a lot of value. And again, respecting it though. That's the thing. This is the charge we're leading, and this is why we branded everything. We continue to brand everything. We don't do the white labels because we realize that when you have a brand, much like you look at the world's biggest brands, a brand is a brand promise. It's a promise that I will serve you the way that I will serve you consistently. That's what a brand is. Yeah. And if you abuse that, people can call you out on it and your brand loses value.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a very powerful thing you're doing. Yes. So I think the wallet then analyzing everything going on in your phone, and you would know that I watched a movie on Netflix. You might know that I, made certain phone calls to my spouse or whatever it happens to be. I mean, you're going to have this incredible insight that I might actually want to install Kiip because you're going to give me only top tier offers.
Yes, but we don't want to just live as an app, right? Or a network of apps. We want to live as a concept that people obviously understand the value immediately from seeing it. So Intel Inside, the world's best case study of an ingredient brand, right? Yeah. People know that if an Intel, well, at least not right now, but when they were at the peak, it was, if your computer has Intel in it, that must mean it's fast. Yeah. Bingo. And has Wi-Fi built into the chip, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, and Amex is the same thing. When you see the Amex blue box, it means that it's trusted. It's Amex. Yeah. It's got rewards to it as well. All this other stuff. High end. We want Kiip to signify that there's some level of reciprocity there, that something meaningful is going to happen when I'm a part of this experience because it's Kiip enabled. And that to me is the number one power behind it. I think the world's biggest companies, any billion-dollar company, has two major components to it, right? One is a consumer recognizable brand, and the second is a self-propagating platform. Facebook has this, right? Google has this. All these guys that have built billion-dollar companies or multi-hundred billions of dollars of companies, these guys have those two things. We want to build those in a way that respects the consumer, right? Because again, a lot of people get very antsy and they just abuse systems because that's what entrepreneurs typically do is they exploit, sort of unregulated systems early on. I go, well, I don't think we want to exploit. I think we want to understand why the consumer ultimately cares about this, right? Because we always forget this. In advertising specifically, it's like the publisher and the advertiser are the two most important people in the ecosystem. What happens to the user? No one seems to care. And for the first time, we're placing them at the top of the pyramid.
Yeah, well, the publications care. They want to get them in there, but they will now with this native advertising.
Native is one big piece and big movement that I'm excited about. And
You're excited about it. What are you? No concerns about it? I mean, you read BuzzFeed and you can't tell what's.
They say it's sponsored by a brand. I think
you can tell.
Yeah, I can tell because it's got a different color.
Is it really?
Yeah, it says it's sponsored by a brand.
Let's go to BuzzFeed right now.
Go to BuzzFeed.
BuzzFeed.com. We'll see what happens here. Because I was on. Okay, Will Tell. I think that's content. 10 celebrities. That looks like content. Everything you want to know about sex toys, that's content. No, presented by Durex.
Bingo, right?
You see, I don't know.
But it's very small. I know.
It's very small.
But here's the funny thing about native advertising.
And it's in the content column.
People always say, like, Brian, like, are you?
And by the way, that's a little bit, and here's like presented by the hero.
Yeah.
It's getting a little bit better. I think that the FTC, who regulates this, is starting to, I think people are starting to realize, damn, they're going to come down on this. Because can you tell on your Facebook when you see, like, you open it up and it's like partner or sponsor, it's like so light gray?
Yeah.
I can't tell. And I'm like, is this liked by Robert Scoble? Does Robert Scoble like Intuit or Quicken or I can't tell.
I think it'll be self-policing. Because ultimately people will tell, and we're not stupid. Like, we will see content that just seems very placed. And I think there's a lot of this happening right now on the newsfeed. I think there was a bunch of stuff that happened recently where it's saying that you liked something even though you never liked it. And so, again, there's
WTF.
Yeah, I mean, but people will. It's a community. People will hold each other responsible. But again, like I don't think native. I think native is a movement. I think it will be very predominant for a while. I just don't think it's the end goal.
I think it's gonna be lasting. But here, if you look at this BuzzFeed, pull it up for one more second. Like when you actually get to the permalink, the disclosure is
on the bottom.
No, it's right there. Okay. This is the disclosure. The hero. That's the disclosure. I mean, when the disclosure is, because the hero looks just like a logo, and this is actually the disclosure. It's a little gray text BuzzFeed partner. Now, that font is smaller than the text by 50%, smaller than the headline by 80%, and it's smaller than the share buttons. When you think about it, it's smaller than the share buttons. I mean, how would anybody ever know? It's not even a different color. It's not a background. Nobody's going to know. If I had 100 people come to this and say, is this an article or is it an advertisement? I don't know. I think half are going to be misled. What do you think?
The new generation, I think it's a generational thing for sure, right? So I think...
Why? You just...
Would they care? That's the question.
Well, right? No, but that's not the question, Brian.
What's the question?
Not that they care. I mean, it's fine
Would
that
I
they
care
don't.
that it's sponsored, right?
It's fine that you don't care and you assume...
Yes.
That the world is corrupt.
Yes.
But the fact is disclosure matters. I mean, legally it matters.
But even in TV, we assume that TV is supported by advertising. That's just the whole assumption. Because it was a cultural phenomenon.
When you go to an ad, you know it's an ad break.
Yes. But it's a cultural thing where I know that TV will have ads in it. And I think in the future with our newer generation, we know that content... It's not free. There will be something in there, right? And I again, like you're right. I'm not disagreeing that there has to be a better delineation for sure. I'm just saying that I will say that there will be a very interesting shift in thinking around how, again, media is consumed, how the new generations perceive privacy. Don't want to open that can of worms because that's like a 3-hour-long conversation.
Yeah, we can go for dark too.
Exactly. But these are all things that I think the new generation will just break down all the assumptions that we've ever had.
Yeah.
And you'll just be so surprised. And I just, because you see this every generation. Again, history repeats itself. It's like there were so many things that happened in the most recent generation where mass media was not even a concept until this, the radio came around or whatever it was, or the printing press, sorry, that these things just, the behavior that occurred from it, like the whole activity of reading the morning news was invented, and that again, these things will happen over and over again.
Well, people were kind of outraged when they first saw product placement in the 80s and 90s when they found out, like, what? That Heineken? And now it's just like you go to see James Bond, and it's like there's a Heineken series of commercials where James Bond is drinking Heineken and he's drinking it in the movie, and you're just like, it's the Heineken Bond movie. It's like, who cares? Whatever.
Yeah. And you have the weirdest tie-ins, right? Like you have Iron Man and Oracle, right? It's like, what?
It's dumb.
So sometimes you'll be like, that's just dumb, right? But I would have loved to go back in time and like the first newspaper ad. Like, what did people...
This is the thing I don't understand about disclosure in a movie.
Yeah.
Why is there no disclosure in the movie that's an ad? Like in a newspaper, magazine.
Iron Man goes, I'm about to drink something that was sponsored.
No, but how about a little logo on screen that says sponsored?
Sponsored? I don't know.
I mean, it would ruin the film, but if there has to be... where's the disclosure in a movie or a television show? I mean, they have to put it at the end, like this little tiny thing in the credits that some of the products used in this program might have been paid for.
I think they do that anyways. I'm not sure. It's just
I think it's
very tiny.
It's buried in the back.
Yeah. But again, that's the advertising dynamic that needs to just be changed overall. Like when you look at it, it's just like tricking people into seeing stuff isn't exactly the cleanest way to promote your product all the time, right? Like as a marketer, you have to think like, what am I doing to again make people's lives better? Like the funny thing is, there's one common thread across every consumer brand that I've ever worked with. Their mantra is to make people's lives better. That's it, right?
Don't they want to sell stuff too?
They do, but the selling of that stuff makes people's lives better, right? So that's the whole thing. But when you look at that,
certainly that's how the cereal companies and McDonald's think.
Yeah, exactly. Or at least they fool themselves.
They fool themselves into thinking exactly.
But when you look at that common theme, isn't that interesting, right? Yeah. That everybody wants to make you better. So why is there no way for them to do that without just showing you a picture of it, right? So I think the advertising mechanics that exist today, because there's so much of a cesspool of everybody kind of slicing and dicing the same thing over and over again, the energy is being used not to make things that actually change the entire industry, but to just make the same thing more efficient. I mean, Elon Musk's interview at All Things D, blew up because he made everybody look like elementary school kids because he's like, why the hell do we need another?
In your
photo
case,
shoot?
accurate.
So I wasn't offended.
Yeah, you weren't offended.
No, I was
You're like, I do look like I technically I am going to look like I do look like that, right?
But no, but the whole thing with that interview was people were flipping out because it was like,
he's a tough guy to have as a friend because I go to dinner with him and it's like, hey, how's Inside going? And it's like, well, we're going to revolutionize the media space. And it's like, I'm like, how's Mars? He's like, we're getting there.
But how's the
Hyperloop? Yeah. But you know what? You can't benchmark yourself against Einstein.
I'm not saying
or Da Vinci.
I'm not saying we should. And he's like the Da Vinci of our time. But I think what he made.
I mean, he makes Steve Jobs look silly. Think about that. Right? I mean, who do you respect most as an entrepreneur? Like, if you say, hey, when I'm 60, 70 years old, I want people to think of me like...
So... in modern times, as someone like Elon, I say someone like because I don't ever want to mirror myself or strive to be someone. I want to be my own
I know.
person,
but if you could say, hey, I did what that person did, what would it be?
The Renaissance is this period of human history that fascinates me,
okay.
right? Because it's like there were this phenomena of the Renaissance man, right? Like, and we use it jokingly sometimes to apply to people like Elon, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But it's like, I think we've developed as a human race to have specialties, right? Sure. To have things to compete. That we do things for the sake of other things that don't necessarily are for the greater, human. And the funny thing is, Da Vinci's inventions and his art were mostly appreciated posthumously, right? And I actually want to feel the same way. I won't feel it because I'll be dead, but I just want to create things that 100 years later people go, yeah, I get it now, right? And it doesn't matter at the time if you got that recognition. You just need to know that what you're creating, you just had a hunch and you're like, I just want to go after this thing like a madman, right? And in many cases, that's how every genuine business should be formed. It isn't someone going, oh, you know what? I want to be an entrepreneur and I'm just going to raise some money and build something. And it's not about that. I think it's about you and not even about solving a problem either, right? Like that's why I always, if VC's like, what problem? That's great. That's naturally going to be there. But what are you just like waking up and going, you know what? If I don't do this, I don't think the world will be a better place in 100 years. And I think that's what Elon said. He said, if no one's going to build the electric car right now and everybody's going to hold a candlelight vigil and whatever, then I'm just going to go do it, right? And he just went, again, easier said than done for him because, again, he was PayPal Mafia, he had a lot of money, It's great.
He lost it all.
Oh, he did?
He lost all his money with doing Tesla. He was broke.
Oh, with doing Tesla.
He was living off loans.
But he pumped it into Tesla, though.
Right.
At least he had the ability to pump it in the first place.
I mean, you want to talk about taking a stand.
I'm not going to assume anybody's financial situation. But I think the thing is, when you look at it, you have a staged process with certain entrepreneurs enter certain stages. And I think for me, like in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, the stage I'd like to be in is crazy change. Like it's Henry Ford invented the dynamic that now I have to sit in traffic for fucking 2 hours, right? But it's like
$10 in the swear jar there.
Okay,
106. You made it 66 minutes and 30 seconds. Damn it, we don't charge you for it.
Okay, good. But he invented that.
No charge.
He invented that dynamic, right? And I think entrepreneurs that invent those dynamics are the ones that truly change the world.
True. All right, listen, Brian Wong, I could talk to this kid for hours. So you're not even a kid anymore. You're 22. I can't even call you a kid. Everybody check out Kiip.me. Kiip.
We have Kiip.com too, by the way. We managed to get the domain.
Congrats on that. Kiip.com.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. And if you're a developer or a salesperson, I always say the first name at the domain name tends to go to the founder. He tends to get first shot at it.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing Brian at Kiip.com might go to the right person. If you've got beg him for breakfast like he did everybody else. And congratulations. Wow. Really great stuff. And thanks for coming on the program. What else can I tell you guys? Follow at Jason, that's me, at TWI Startups, that's the show. The YouTube channel is youtube.com/thisweekin. And thank you to our sponsors, Brandis on the ones and the twos, DeMont and Luke for selling out the show, Kieran for producing, Emily for making sure we got asses and seats at the events and everything else, and Kroot for making sure we get venues and investments are made from the launch fund. We'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups.